Hey folks, I'm Brendan, and you're watching the Overqualified Henchman. So how about that title down there, right? Yikes. Hey, I get it. Diversity, or lack thereof, in movie casting can be a pretty hot button topic. That said, this video isn't about why it's important. Partly because my lily white, albeit shapely rear end is maybe not the most qualified to talk about that, but also because I feel like most of us are on mostly the same page by now. There are still people who will boycott a movie outright if there aren't enough white guys on the poster, but that's not really the demo I'm going for. What I keep running into over the last few months, though, is when the topic comes up, people saying something along the lines of, well, sure, more diverse casting would be nice, but, ... usually followed by one of the same handful of arguments. So, this is, let's call it 12 common arguments against more diverse casting, and why I think they're kind of dumb. Obviously, this is a complex issue, and it's already going to be one of my longer videos, so I apologize ahead of time for when I inevitably skip over something important. I'm going to be talking mainly in the context of movies, but all of this applies to TV shows, video games, animation, comics, which means when I talk about casting, I'm not just talking about which actors are hired, but also which character stories we choose to tell in the first place. With that said, when you criticize the movie I like, you're criticizing me. A lot of us take our choice in entertainment pretty seriously, and it's hard not to feel attacked when our favorites are being criticized. But part of liking something is being honest and thoughtful about it. Look, if you've already been watching my channel, then you probably know I'm a big Firefly fan. But if a friend tells me that they could never really get into the show because of all the borrowed Civil War imagery and talk about rising again, that's not them saying that they think my car's painted like the General Lee. And I have to be self-aware enough to say that, yeah, in a world so heavily influenced by Chinese culture that everybody speaks fluent Mandarin, it's a little weird that nobody in our large ensemble cast is Chinese. You can like something and still acknowledge places where it could have been even better. If you flat out refuse to hear what other people took away from the same media, that's where you're gonna run into trouble. Oh, you just don't like that actor, or studio, or director, or franchise, whatever. So recently, Scarlett Johansson was cast in the lead role as Major Kusanagi in the new Ghost in the Shell live-action movie. If the name didn't tip you off, the Major is a Japanese character, which makes this a pretty textbook example of whitewashing. Not surprisingly, there was a pretty big reaction online, and one of the defenses was, hey, give Johansson a chance, she might put in a really great performance. And she totally might, and that's not the point. Whitewashing isn't an issue because of one casting decision, it's an issue because of a pattern of decisions. Criticizing another piece in that pattern is not the same as attacking one actor. On the other hand, some people did go after Johansson for accepting the part, and I think that's sort of a simplification. You can debate whether it's fair to expect an actor to turn down work, but you also look at the casting director, the producers, the studio, the executives, the shareholders, the audience. Point is, there's a lot of responsibility to go around, and that's not to absolve anyone individually, but focusing on one person, especially just the most visible person, runs the risk of ignoring how big the problem actually is. You're not being faithful to the source material. So, pretty well-known bit of trivia, Captain America was a werewolf for a while. In fact, you could walk into a toy store today and buy a Captain America action figure with a werewolf head. And I did, because of course I did. It's Captain America as a werewolf. You could also walk into a store today and buy an issue of Captain America starring Sam Wilson, who also got turned into a werewolf for a bit because, again, of course he did. What I'm getting at is there's a difference between the details of a character and the spirit of the character. Adaptations can be an opportunity to re-examine characters or take them in new directions. There's no great virtue in translating the source material letter for letter, panel by panel. Well, if Nick Fury can be black, why can't the Ancient One be white? Well, two reasons. The first one's really simple, the second one's more complicated. First reason is basically just math. Let's look at the heroes of the original Avengers movie. Now I'm going to include the Avengers themselves, so Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, Black Widow, and Hawkeye, as well as our three big S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, so Fury, Coulson, and Hill. So what that gives us is 6 white men, 2 white women, and 1 black man. You could have made, let's say, Hawkeye Puerto Rican, and the white men would still outnumber everybody else put together. On the other hand, if you'd made Nick Fury white, as in the source material, well, you see where I'm going with this. It doesn't work both ways because we're not starting from an even playing field to begin with. The more complicated reason requires you to understand that in most fiction, to this day, white, straight, and male aren't considered character traits so much as they're considered default. There are a lot of characters who aren't white and male because of any compelling reason, there just wasn't a good reason for them not to be. I use Puerto Rican Hawkeye as an example. Does that at all affect his ability to shoot a bow, to make snarky comments? If you do follow comics, then you'll already know that Kate Bishop proves you can mix things up and that formula still works. On the other hand, Black Panther is the latest in a long line of African kings. That's baked into the concept of the character and can't be easily changed. It's just pandering anyway. Just because something isn't specifically targeted at you doesn't make it pandering. And I know, normally everything is targeted at you, so this is weird. You want to talk about Ghostbusters? Alright, we'll talk about Ghostbusters. Great movie, lots of fans, and this may blow your mind, some of whom are women. They're bringing the franchise back, they want a new, fresh take, they go for an all-female cast. Maybe that doesn't sound good to you. Fine, go back and watch the original movie. You have lost exactly nothing. If you want something that reflects you and only you 100% of the time, get a mirror. They're ruining my childhood. I'm a guy who likes action figures and Lego and cartoons and lots of other stuff I was introduced to in my childhood. But I'll put it to you this way. Power Rangers is not my childhood. Playing Power Rangers at recess, getting hurt, and not being allowed to watch Power Rangers anymore, that's my childhood. If a new series or movie piques my interest, hey, no shame, I'll watch it. If they end up not being for me, that's fine too. I'm not the target audience anymore. And being open to people trying new things with the idea means that sometimes I get to enjoy stuff like the Power Rangers comic being put out by Boom. It's fine to still like stuff you liked when you were a kid, just, be a grown-up about it. They just mess it up and make the character a stereotype anyway. This one's well-meaning, but I like to think of it as the Iron Fist argument. Among other things, Iron Fist is a rich white guy who goes to a mystical temple and almost immediately learns to be better at kung fu than any of the Asian monks who have been doing it their entire lives. When casting talks started for the Iron Fist Netflix series, a lot of people said, hey, great opportunity to fix that problem. What about an Asian American Iron Fist? The big argument against that was, well, then you'd have an Asian guy who's really good at martial arts. Stereotype. And maybe so, but he'd be the hero. Just within the Marvel Netflix series, you've already got Daredevil, a white guy who's really good at martial arts, fighting hordes and hordes of the Hand, evil Japanese ninjas. So you've already crossed that stereotype line, except they're all bad guys. Not every portrayal is going to be perfect, and there are absolutely things you need to stop and think through, but that's not an excuse to not try at all. Look, there's a black Disney princess now, why are we still talking about this? Let's look at Captain America Civil War. How great was it that that movie had Falcon, War Machine, and Black Panther? They all got screen time, they were all engaging, they all got their own distinct personalities. That was a big win and deserves to be celebrated. But it doesn't change it if you're looking for a woman of color in a Marvel movie, you'd have better luck if that color was green. Or that we still don't have a single openly LGBT hero in that entire franchise. Hashtag give Captain America a boyfriend. Point is, diversity in casting isn't something you can check off the list and then move on from. It's a big issue, bigger than any one part or one movie, and it's something we're gonna have to keep talking about. We can't have a gay person in there. How am I supposed to explain it to my kids? Okay, this is an actual double standard. When was the last time you saw a strictly kids movie that didn't have some kind of romantic plot? Dramatic kiss, somebody gets married at the end. There's nothing inappropriate about that, and there still wouldn't be if it were a same-sex or non-binary couple. Facts are facts. You need a big name to sell tickets. So the implication here is that there aren't any actors of color who are big enough names to get people into theaters, which is just patently untrue. How many people are only interested in Aquaman because it's Jason Momoa? How excited do people get every time that Idris Elba as James Bond rumor crops up again? In fact, let me pitch this. Idris Elba as Batman with John Cho as Nightwing. It's a license to print money. Are big name actors disproportionately white? Yeah, but only because there are more roles for them to go around where they can prove themselves. That's the other problem with this argument. Plenty of movies star relative unknowns. What did you seriously know about Chris Hemsworth before Thor? And John Boyega didn't exactly ruin The Force Awakens at the box office. It's just a question of who the studios are willing to take a chance on. Well, studios exist to make money. Yes, companies exist to make money. Thank you for that startling economic insight. My question becomes, why are you, as an individual consumer, using that to defend their bad behavior? If a company exploits its factory workers, or fakes an emissions test, or cuts corners on safety, we understand that it was to make money, but that doesn't mean we're okay with it. You can argue about scale and type there, but for me the principle is the same. When a studio decides that a whitewashed cast is a safer bet, They're not doing it out of malice, they're not doing it because they're evil, but that doesn't mean we should let them off the hook. Why do you even care? Okay, so I lied a little bit. This is the part of the video where I talk a little bit about why diversity in casting is important. Just being who I am in our society comes with a bunch of advantages, privileges, and one of those is being able to walk into a movie theater on any day of the week and take my pick from a bunch of heroes all specifically designed to be as relatable as possible to me. Which is great, because even with those advantages, there's been plenty of times where I've felt like I don't fit in or I'm not good enough. And those heroes were empowering and inspiring. The idea that there are people who are made to feel that way more often than me don't have that is crazy. It's also crazy that there's more variety in the people I see walking to the subway station every morning than there are in the average movie with robots and gods and werewolves. If we're going to keep telling stories about characters who do the right thing, even if it doesn't directly affect them or it's not convenient, the least we can do is act like we're paying attention. I know that was a heavier one than normal, so thanks for watching. If you too have opinions on the internet, you know where to drop me a line. Do me a favor, remember to like, subscribe, and share, and until next time, keep on henching.